This wasn't random. You're back here again. Not in the same place, but at the same ending. It looks different this time. Different faces, different promises, different circumstances. And yet the feeling is identical. By the end of this, the repetition will stop feeling like bad luck. It will start to look like structure. Not fate, not punishment. Structure. Most people think repetition means failure. They think it means they didn't try hard enough, didn't think clearly enough, didn't choose carefully enough. But repetition is rarely about effort. It is about familiarity. The nervous system prefers what it recognizes, even when what it recognizes leads to the same quiet collapse. You told yourself it would be different. You felt sure this time. The tone was softer. The beginning was smoother. The red flags were smaller. But now you're here again, at that subtle edge. That moment where something inside you knows how this ends. Repetition does not start at the ending. It starts at selection, at the level of what feels natural. What feels natural is not always what is healthy. It is what is familiar. Familiarity creates comfort. Comfort lowers vigilance. And lowered vigilance allows old dynamics to re-enter unnoticed. When you meet someone new, or enter a new opportunity, or restart something you once left, your conscious mind evaluates surface qualities: compatibility, logic, potential. But beneath that evaluation, something quieter is happening. Your system is scanning for resonance. Resonance is the emotional echo of past environments. The rhythm feels known. The tension feels recognizable. Even the uncertainty feels oddly aligned with something you've navigated before. Recognition creates attraction. Not always romantic attraction. Structural attraction. You lean toward what your nervous system has practiced surviving. Survival patterns are efficient. They require less cognitive effort because the script already exists. This is why the beginning often feels effortless. You know how to respond. You know how to adapt. You know how to interpret the silences and the shifts. It feels intuitive, but what feels intuitive is often rehearsed. Rehearsed dynamics create the illusion of chemistry. In reality, they are preloaded responses activating automatically. You don't consciously choose the ending. You choose the beginning that statistically leads to it. That selection happens quietly, without dramatic awareness. The mind believes it is choosing differently, but the body gravitates toward similar emotional geometry. Emotional geometry is the shape of closeness and distance, the balance of attention, the distribution of power, the timing of validation and withdrawal. If that geometry resembles something embedded early in experience, it feels stable, even if it once hurt. Stability does not mean safety, it means predictability. Predictability reduces anxiety at the start. The system thinks, I know this terrain. But knowing the terrain does not mean the terrain leads somewhere new. You may change details. You may speak more clearly this time. You may set boundaries earlier. Yet the underlying pattern remains intact, because the pattern is relational, not situational. Situations change, patterns persist. This is why you find yourself at the same emotional conclusion, even with different variables, the same disappointment, the same quiet realization. You promised yourself you wouldn't return here, and yet here you are. Not because you forgot, because the beginning did not feel like the old beginning. It felt upgraded. Upgraded does not mean transformed. It means slightly modified. The nervous system does not track labels. It tracks dynamics. If the dynamic carries a familiar sequence, the system prepares for the usual ending. Preparation is subtle. You may notice small tension earlier than before, a faint hesitation. But optimism overrides it. You tell yourself growth has occurred. You tell yourself awareness is enough to prevent repetition. Awareness without structural change often just creates a more articulate version of the same loop. You describe the pattern while still participating in it. You analyze it while it unfolds. Insight alone does not dissolve familiarity. Familiarity must be interrupted at the level of attraction. And attraction is rarely logical. You are back here not because you are careless, but because what feels aligned internally is shaped by earlier blueprints. Blueprints are formed long before conscious decision-making matures. They define what closeness feels like, what tension feels normal. If inconsistency once accompanied connection, inconsistency may now feel like intimacy. If emotional distance once coexisted with affection, distance may now feel like depth. The system does not differentiate between healthy and unhealthy familiarity. It differentiates between known and unknown. Unknown feels threatening, even if it is healthier. This is why radically different dynamics often feel uncomfortable at first. They lack the emotional texture your system has practiced. Practice builds preference. Preference builds repetition. Repetition builds narrative. You start telling yourself a story about your type, your luck, your patterns. But the deeper pattern sits beneath narrative. It sits at the level of regulation. Your nervous system co-regulates with certain rhythms more easily than others. Fast intensity, slow withdrawal, sudden reassurance, intermittent validation. These rhythms may not be ideal, but they are fluent. Fluency creates the illusion of compatibility. You move in sync because you've moved like this before. Notice that the repetition rarely feels chaotic at the beginning. It feels familiar. It feels almost right. Only later does the misalignment surface, when the familiar rhythm reveals its predictable cost. And then comes the recognition, the quiet sentence in your mind. I've been here before. Recognition often arrives late, after emotional investment, after rationalization. But even before recognition, subtle signals were present. You felt slight echoes. You dismissed them. Not because you are naive, but because familiarity was stronger than caution. You are back here because the system optimized for what it knows. Optimization is efficient. It conserves energy. Learning something entirely new requires discomfort. It requires tolerating unfamiliar calm. Unfamiliar calm can feel empty or suspicious. The absence of intensity may feel like absence of connection, because intensity was once the marker of closeness. So you return to intensity. And intensity often carries the same ending. This is the loop, not a dramatic spiral, a structural recurrence. The ending feels inevitable, but it is not predetermined. It is patterned. Patterned means repeated under similar conditions. Change the conditions at the surface, and the pattern persists. Change the internal blueprint, and the selection shifts. You are back here, notice that. Not as accusation, as observation. Observation slows the loop. When you see the geometry clearly, it loses some of its automatic pull. You begin to recognize the early signs, the subtle tone, the slight imbalance. Recognition does not immediately stop repetition, but it interrupts denial. Denial keeps the loop invisible. Visibility weakens inevitability. You are not trapped in fate. You are moving within familiarity. Familiarity can be revised, but revision feels unstable at first. Stability and repetition are not the same. You can feel stable inside a pattern that always ends the same way. Real stability may feel unfamiliar, quiet, less dramatic, less urgent. That unfamiliar quiet may initially feel wrong because it does not match the old blueprint. If you're back here again, it means the blueprint is still active, not that you are incapable. Blueprints persist until replaced. They are not erased by intention. They shift when new emotional experiences are tolerated long enough to become familiar. That tolerance is subtle. It happens before the ending changes, before the external narrative shifts. You are back here. Notice that. Notice the similarity, not just in outcome, but in selection, in what felt natural at the start. The loop does not begin where it collapses. It begins where it feels right. That is the quiet truth beneath repetition. You are not cursed by endings. You are guided by familiarity. And familiarity is powerful. Stronger than logic. Stronger than promises made in moments of clarity. But familiarity is not permanent. It is practiced. And what is practiced can be unlearned. Not instantly. Not dramatically. Gradually. Through noticing. through tolerating the discomfort of something that does not feel like before. You're back here, notice that. Because the moment you truly see the pattern at the level of attraction, not just outcome, the loop begins to loosen. And what comes next will not look like this. It will feel different at the beginning, subtly unfamiliar. And that unfamiliarity may be the first sign that the ending will not repeat. There is another layer beneath this repetition. And once you see that layer, even the feeling of being back here will start to change.
I'm Oliver, and now you know why this happens. Or at least a part of it.